The fluorescent lights above the examination table flickered as I gripped the edge of the paper-covered surface. My hands were shaking, not from the cold sterile air, but from the conversation I just had with my boss 15 minutes ago. The oncologist's words echoed in my mind as I stared at the CT scan images on the wall monitor. Vera, I'm sorry, but we found several masses in your chest cavity. We need to start treatment immediately, chemotherapy within the next 2 weeks. My phone buzzed. Another text from Marcus, my manager. Vera, I don't care what some doctor says. We have the Henderson project deadline next Friday. If you're not here Monday, don't bother coming back. I tried calling him one more time, my voice barely steady. Marcus, I have cancer. I need to start chemotherapy next week. This isn't optional. His laugh was cold and mechanical. Cancer? Really? That's the best excuse you could come up with? Look, everyone gets stressed during busy seasons. Take some vitamins and get back to work. The line went dead. I stared at my phone in disbelief. He just dismissed my cancer diagnosis like it was a common cold. Marcus had no idea what he'd just started. 18 days earlier. Life at Dataflow Analytics had been relatively normal. I'd worked there for 4 years as a senior data analyst, consistently receiving excellent performance reviews and praise from clients. My work on predictive modeling had helped the company land several major contracts, and I'd built a reputation for reliability and innovation. Then Marcus Sterling arrived. He walked into our Austin office like he owned the place, wearing designer suits that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Everything about him screamed corporate climber, the way he name-dropped his previous job at a Fortune 500 company, how he immediately started criticizing our small company mentality, and his condescending smile whenever anyone questioned his methods. Vera, right? He said during our first one-on-one meeting, not looking up from his laptop. I've been reviewing your work. It's adequate for a smaller operation, but we need to elevate our standards. I'd pulled up my portfolio, showing him the Henderson Analytics project that had increased client retention by 23%. This model saved the company $2.3 million last quarter, I explained. Marcus barely glanced at the screen. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. You'll need to prove yourself under my leadership. His tone suggested he'd already made up his mind about my value. That should have been my first warning. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus made my life increasingly difficult. He'd assign me projects with impossible deadlines, then act frustrated when I asked for clarification. Every report I submitted came back with excessive red ink corrections, even when the data was accurate. He'd schedule mandatory meetings during my lunch breaks and criticize my lack of commitment if I mentioned having other plans. Vera, this analysis is sloppy, he announced during a team meeting, holding up my quarterly report. I need you to completely redo the methodology by tomorrow morning. My co-workers shifted uncomfortably. The methodology was the same one I'd used for 3 years, the one that had consistently delivered accurate predictions. But Marcus was establishing his dominance, and I was apparently his chosen target. I'm concerned about your attention to detail, he continued, making sure everyone heard. This kind of work reflects poorly on the entire team. After the meeting, my colleague Sarah whispered, that report was perfect. We all know it. But he's trying to establish himself as the alpha. The stress was getting to me. I'd started experiencing chest pains and fatigue, but I attributed it to the hostile work environment. The knots in my stomach tightened every time I heard Marcus's voice. I was having trouble sleeping, constantly worried about what impossible task he'd assign next. My friend Lisa from the marketing department pulled me aside one afternoon. Vera, you look exhausted. Are you okay? It's just Marcus, I said, rubbing my temples. He's making my life hell. Have you talked to HR? I'd tried. The HR director, Janet, had listened politely but seemed uncomfortable addressing concerns about the new manager. Marcus is still adjusting to our company culture, she said. Give him time to settle in. Meanwhile, my chest pains were getting worse. Sharp, stabbing sensations that made it hard to breathe. I finally made a doctor's appointment, thinking it was stress-related anxiety. Dr. Rodriguez took one look at my symptoms and ordered immediate tests. Vera, I'm concerned about these chest pains. We need to run some scans to rule out serious conditions. The waiting room at the imaging center was filled with nervous patients. I sat there, scrolling through work emails, watching Marcus assign me 3 new projects with overlapping deadlines. Even while getting medical tests, I couldn't escape his demands. When Dr. Rodriguez called me back to discuss the results, her expression was grave. "Vera, I need you to sit down. We found several masses in your chest cavity. We need to do a biopsy immediately." The world seemed to tilt. Masses? Like cancer? "We won't know for certain until we get the biopsy results, but given the size and location, we need to act quickly. I'm referring you to an oncologist." I drove back to the office in a daze. Cancer. The word kept echoing in my mind. I was 28 years old, had no family history of cancer, and had always been healthy. How was this possible? Marcus was waiting at my desk when I returned. "Where have you been? You've been gone for 3 hours." "I had a medical appointment," I said quietly. "A medical appointment?" He made air quotes mockingly. "Vera, we're in the middle of our busiest quarter. Personal errands need to wait." I stared at him. It wasn't a personal errand. I had medical tests done. "Well, whatever it was, the Henderson project isn't going to complete itself. I need those projections by end of day tomorrow." The oncologist's office was intimidating, sterile white walls covered with medical certificates and cancer awareness posters. Dr. Kim was kind but direct. "Vera, the biopsy confirms our suspicions. You have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The good news is that it's treatable, but we need to start chemotherapy immediately." My hands shook as I took notes. How immediately? "Within the next 2 weeks. The tumors are aggressive, and delay could compromise treatment effectiveness. You'll need to take significant time off work for treatment and recovery." I thought about Marcus's reaction to my 3-hour medical appointment. "How much time off?" "Initially, you'll need at least 6 weeks for the first round of chemotherapy. After that, we'll reassess, but you're looking at several months of treatment." That evening, I researched the Family and Medical Leave Act. I had the right to take unpaid leave for serious medical conditions. My cancer diagnosis clearly qualified. I prepared all the necessary paperwork, including detailed medical documentation from Dr. Kim. The next morning, I knocked on Marcus's office door. "I need to submit medical leave paperwork. I've been diagnosed with cancer and need to start treatment immediately." Marcus looked up from his computer with obvious annoyance. "Cancer? Vera, that's quite a claim. Are you sure you're not just overwhelmed by the workload?" I placed Dr. Kim's letter on his desk. "This is official medical documentation. I need to start chemotherapy within the next 2 weeks." He barely glanced at the letter. "Look, Vera, I understand you're feeling stressed. We all go through difficult periods. But the team needs you right now. Can't you postpone this treatment until after the Henderson project?" I stared at him in disbelief. Postpone cancer treatment? "I'm sure it's not as urgent as the doctors are making it sound. Medical professionals tend to be overly cautious. Take the weekend to think about it." I submitted my FMLA paperwork directly to HR that afternoon. The forms were complete, signed by my oncologist, with treatment scheduled to begin the following Monday. I made copies of everything and got a receipt showing the exact time of submission. Marcus called me into his office first thing Monday morning. "Vera, I can't seem to locate your medical leave paperwork anywhere. Did you actually submit it?" "Yes, I handed it directly to Janet on Friday at 2:30 p.m. "Well, it's not in the system," he said with a shrug. "I can't approve leave for documentation that doesn't exist." I went straight to HR. Janet looked uncomfortable when I asked about my forms. "Oh, those forms?" Marcus said there were some issues with the medical documentation. "He's handling your case directly now." "What kind of issues?" "You'll need to discuss that with Marcus." Back in his office, Marcus was eating lunch at his desk, making me wait while he finished his sandwich. "The medical documentation seems incomplete, Vera. I need more detailed information about your condition and treatment plan. The oncologist's letter clearly states I have cancer and need immediate treatment. Anyone can get a letter from a doctor. I need proof that this is actually serious." My chest tightened with a familiar pain. Proof? You want proof that I have cancer? I want verification that this isn't just an elaborate scheme to get out of work during our busy season. That afternoon, I had my first chemotherapy session. The treatment center was filled with other cancer patients, some bald from treatment, others wearing scarves and hats. I felt like an imposter among these obviously sick people. I didn't look sick yet. The chemotherapy drugs made me nauseous within hours. By evening, I was vomiting and could barely keep water down. My phone kept buzzing with messages from Marcus. Vera, I need the Henderson projections first thing tomorrow morning. Are you planning to attend the client meeting on Wednesday? Your absence is putting the entire team behind schedule. I called him from my bathroom floor, where I'd been sick for the past hour. Marcus, I'm having chemotherapy. I can't work right now. One day of treatment shouldn't incapacitate you completely. I've had employees work through much worse. This isn't a cold. This is cancer treatment. Look, Vera, I need to be honest with you. Your recent performance has been disappointing, and now this convenient medical emergency during our busiest quarter. It doesn't look good. He hung up before I could respond. The next day, I was too sick to get out of bed. The chemotherapy had hit me harder than Dr. Kim had predicted. I managed to send Marcus an email explaining that I was experiencing severe side effects and couldn't work. His response came within minutes. Vera, this is your final warning. If you don't show up tomorrow, I'll have no choice but to consider this job abandonment. I forwarded his email to Dr. Kim's office. When the nurse called me back, she was appalled. Vera, it's completely normal to be bedridden after your first chemo session. Your immune system is compromised. You shouldn't even be thinking about work right now. But Marcus wasn't finished. That evening, he sent me a formal email with HR copied. Vera Martinez, final warning for attendance issues. Despite multiple conversations about your responsibilities to the team, you continue to prioritize personal matters over your professional obligations. Your recent absences during our critical project deadline demonstrate a concerning lack of commitment. This serves as your final warning. Any further unexcused absences will result in immediate termination for job abandonment. Marcus Sterling, Analytics Manager. I stared at the email through my medication haze. He was calling my cancer treatment personal matters. He was threatening to fire me for having chemotherapy. I screenshotted the email and sent it to my friend Lisa. Her response was immediate. Vera, this is insane. You need to talk to a lawyer. Through my network, I found Maria Chun, an employment attorney who specialized in medical leave cases. Even through my chemo fog, I managed to explain the situation. Vera, what you're describing is a clear violation of the Family and Medical Leave Act. Your employer cannot threaten termination for taking protected medical leave. But Marcus says my paperwork was incomplete. Do you have proof you submitted it? I showed her the receipt from HR and copies of all my medical documentation. Maria's expression grew serious. This is textbook retaliation. We need to document everything immediately. Over the next few days, between chemotherapy sessions, I started building my case. Every email from Marcus, every text message, every witness to his behavior. I pulled my performance reviews from before he arrived, all excellent ratings and positive feedback from clients. Then I remembered something crucial. During team meetings, Marcus often recorded sessions for documentation purposes. If those recordings still existed, they might contain evidence of his harassment. I also recalled Marcus making inappropriate comments about other employees' medical issues. Sarah from accounting had mentioned that Marcus had been dismissive when she needed time off for her mother's surgery. He told me that family obligations shouldn't interfere with productivity, she'd said. I reached out to Sarah. I know this is sensitive, but I'm building a case against Marcus for medical leave discrimination. Did he ever make inappropriate comments about your mother's surgery? Sarah's response was immediate. Vera, I've been waiting for someone to stand up to him. Yes, he made several inappropriate comments. I documented everything because I was considering filing a complaint myself. Within a week, I'd identified 3 other employees who had similar experiences with Marcus. Jenny from customer service had been written up for taking time off when her husband was hospitalized. Tom from IT had been threatened with termination for missing work during his father's cancer treatment. We all had a common thread: Marcus had shown complete disregard for employees facing serious medical situations. Maria helped me file formal complaints with both the Department of Labor and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. The complaints detailed a pattern of discrimination against employees who needed medical leave. Once we file these complaints, data flow will be under federal investigation, Maria explained. They'll have to preserve all documents related to your case. The investigation notice arrived at Dataflow on a Friday afternoon. According to Sarah, Marcus had gone pale when he received the official letter. He'd immediately called an emergency meeting with the executive team. "He's panicking," Sarah texted me. "He spent the entire weekend going through emails and documents. I think he realized how much evidence exists." But Marcus wasn't going down without a fight. On Monday morning, I received a LinkedIn message from him: "Vera, you're making a huge mistake. This will destroy your career in this industry. I have connections everywhere." I immediately forwarded the message to Maria. "This is witness intimidation," she said. "Marcus just handed us more ammunition." The story began gaining attention when a local business journalist, Kevin Torres, reached out to Maria. He was investigating workplace discrimination in the tech industry and had heard about my case through legal networks. I agreed to an anonymous interview. "I was threatened with termination for having cancer treatment," I told Kevin. "My manager called my chemotherapy sessions personal matters and claimed I was faking my illness to avoid work." Kevin's article, titled "The Hidden Cost of Toxic Management in Tech," was published online and immediately went viral. The article didn't name Dataflow specifically, but anyone in the Austin tech community could identify the company from the details. Current and former Dataflow employees began sharing their own stories in the comments. "I worked there for 3 years before Marcus arrived. He created a culture of fear and intimidation. Same manager. I was written up for taking my son to the emergency room. He told me that my husband's heart attack was inconvenient timing for the company." Within 48 hours, the article had over 100 comments from employees detailing similar experiences with Marcus's management style. Dataflow's PR team went into damage control mode, issuing a corporate statement: "Dataflow Analytics is committed to supporting our employees through difficult times and maintaining a workplace culture that values both productivity and compassion." The statement backfired spectacularly. Employees flooded Dataflow's social media posts with their own stories about Marcus's behavior. Compassionate workplace? They threatened to fire someone for having cancer treatment. I was told my mother's death was disruptive to team productivity. Dataflow's LinkedIn post about their commitment to employee wellness received over 300 negative comments before they disabled commenting entirely. 3 of Dataflow's major clients began asking questions. The Henderson Project client, who I'd worked with for 2 years, called the company directly asking about my status. When they learned I'd been threatened with termination for cancer treatment, they immediately put their contract renewal on hold. Word spread through industry networks. 2 other major clients suspended their contracts, citing concerns about company culture and employee treatment. Dataflow's quarterly revenue projections dropped by 40%. Meanwhile, I was documenting everything. Between chemotherapy sessions, I was gathering witness statements, organizing email evidence, and building a comprehensive case against Marcus. My anonymous source inside Dataflow sent me regular updates. "Marcus is freaking out. He keeps blaming everyone else for the bad publicity. Yesterday he screamed at Janet for not protecting him from frivolous complaints." Dataflow's legal team reached out to Maria with their first settlement offer, $50,000 and a non-disclosure agreement. I looked at the number and laughed, despite feeling nauseous from my latest chemo session. They think $50,000 makes up for threatening to fire me for having cancer? Maria smiled grimly. "We're just getting started. Tell them we'll consider discussing settlement when they reach 6 figures." Through legal discovery, Maria had obtained recordings of several team meetings where Marcus had made inappropriate comments. In one recording, Marcus clearly stated, "Vera's medical situation is creating morale problems. We need to consider whether she's still a good fit for our productivity standards." But the most damaging evidence came from Marcus himself. In his voicemails to HR, he'd said things like, "If Vera tries to claim this was illegal, we'll just document performance issues to support termination." I've already started building that narrative. When Dataflow's lawyers heard the recordings, they immediately requested another settlement meeting. This time, they looked nervous and kept whispering to each other. "Our client is prepared to offer Miss Martinez $100,000 to resolve this matter," their lead attorney said. "Not acceptable," Maria responded. "Your client violated federal law by threatening to fire my client for having cancer treatment. We're going to trial unless we see a serious offer." During a break, I overheard one of Dataflow's lawyers on a phone call. "The recordings are devastating. Marcus basically admits to retaliating against her for medical leave. We need to settle this before it gets worse." When negotiations resumed, their tone had changed completely. "What would it take to resolve this today?" Maria slid a paper across the table. "Full reinstatement, complete back pay, $300,000 in damages, a written apology acknowledging wrongdoing, and Marcus's immediate termination." The lawyers exchanged glances. "We'll need to discuss this with our client." That evening, my source sent an urgent message: "Emergency board meeting tomorrow. Marcus's future is on the agenda. Several board members are saying he's become a liability." The board meeting was apparently a disaster for Marcus. According to my source, he walked in expecting support but instead faced a confrontation about all the evidence from my case. They asked him directly if he'd threatened to fire an employee for having cancer treatment, my friend reported. Marcus tried to claim it was justified because you were abandoning your responsibilities. The meeting lasted 30 minutes. He was terminated immediately. Security escorted Marcus out of the building that afternoon. He was shouting about wrongful termination as they walked him to his car, my source continued. The irony was incredible. With Marcus gone, Dataflow's attitude towards settlement changed dramatically. They were now desperate to avoid a public trial that would expose their internal problems further. Maria and I met with their legal team one final time. The lead attorney looked exhausted. "Miss Martinez, our client deeply regrets the circumstances surrounding your medical leave situation. We're prepared to offer full reinstatement, complete back pay, $400,000 in compensatory damages, and a public acknowledgement of wrongdoing." I looked at Maria, who nodded. "We also require a guarantee that all employees who enabled retaliation against Miss Martinez face appropriate consequences." Already handled. The HR director who failed to protect Miss Martinez has been terminated. We've also implemented new policies to prevent this situation from recurring. The final settlement exceeded my expectations, but the money wasn't the most important part. "I want a written statement acknowledging that threatening me with termination for cancer treatment was illegal," I said. "And I want it posted publicly." When we signed the settlement agreement, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Dataflow published their acknowledgement on their website and social media. Dataflow Analytics acknowledges that the treatment of Vera Martinez regarding her medical leave was inappropriate and violated federal employment law. "We sincerely apologize to Ms. Martinez and have implemented comprehensive policy changes to ensure this never happens again." The statement was shared hundreds of times across social media. Former employees commented with messages of support and their own stories of workplace discrimination. Local news picked up the story. During a TV interview, I said, "No employee should ever have to choose between their health and their job. Cancer treatment saved my life, and I wasn't going to let anyone threaten me for fighting for my life." The interview was viewed over 200,000 times online. I started receiving messages from employees facing similar situations, asking for advice on documenting workplace retaliation. With the settlement money, I decided to start my own consulting company focused on employee rights and workplace compliance. I called it Equitech Solutions, specializing in helping tech companies create genuinely supportive work environments. Sarah, Jenny, and Tom all reached out about joining the company. "It feels good to work for someone who actually understands what employees go through," Sarah said on her first day. Within 8 months, Equitech Solutions had 25 clients and was growing rapidly. We specialized in helping companies avoid the legal and financial disasters that come from toxic management practices. A year after my settlement, I was invited to speak at a national conference on workplace rights in the tech industry. The audience was filled with HR professionals, employment lawyers, and executives. "Employment law exists to protect workers from exactly what happened to me," I told the audience. "But laws only work when people are willing to stand up and enforce them." I shared my story from being threatened with termination for cancer treatment to building a successful business that helped other employees. The standing ovation was overwhelming. After my presentation, a young woman approached me with tears in her eyes. "My manager is threatening to fire me for taking maternity leave. I didn't know I could fight back until I heard your story." I gave her Maria's contact information and assured her that she had rights worth fighting for. Through industry contacts, I learned what happened to Marcus after Dataflow fired him. He tried finding another management position, but word had spread about his employment practices. During background checks, potential employers kept finding references to the lawsuit and his discriminatory behavior. No reputable company wanted to hire someone with his track record. He'd eventually taken a job at a much smaller company for significantly less money, but even there, he only lasted 4 months before being let go again. "He's basically unemployable in the Austin tech scene," a former colleague told me. "Everyone knows what he did." I felt a mixture of satisfaction and pity. Marcus had destroyed his own career through his illegal and unethical behavior. Meanwhile, Dataflow had completely transformed under new leadership. They'd implemented employee-friendly policies and created multiple channels for reporting workplace problems. Several former employees had returned to work there. 2 years after my diagnosis, I was back in a hospital room, but this time as a volunteer. I'd started a program to help cancer patients understand their employment rights if they faced workplace discrimination. "Your boss threatened to fire you for having cancer treatment?" a patient asked, shocked. "Yes, but I fought back and won. And now I help other people do the same thing." Equitech Solutions had grown to 75 employees across 5 states. We'd helped over 300 companies improve their employment practices and assisted hundreds of workers facing discrimination. My cancer treatment had been successful. I was officially in remission, stronger than ever, and using my experience to protect other employees. But the most meaningful moment came when Janet, the former HR director, reached out to apologize. "I should have protected you from Marcus," she said. "I was scared of confronting him, but that was no excuse for failing to do my job." "It's okay, Janet. Not everyone can risk their career to fight injustice. That's why we need strong laws and people willing to enforce them." As I drove home that evening, I reflected on everything that had changed since that awful day when Marcus dismissed my cancer diagnosis. I didn't just get justice for myself, I'd built something that would protect the next Vera from facing what I went through. Marcus had made the biggest mistake of his career when he threatened to fire me for having cancer treatment. He just didn't realize it at the time.